My name is Natalie Parker. I'm 36. On a rainy Saturday at my younger sister's engagement dinner, my mother reduced 12 years of my life to a joke before the first course had even been cleared. She turned to the groom's relatives with that sweet Sunday school expression of hers and said, "This is Natalie, our oldest. She cleans for people." My father followed as if he were adding weather to a report. We stopped trying to understand her choices a long time ago. 19 people were seated around a glossy oval table, with folded napkins, polished silver, and glasses filled to the rim. Then the groom's mother, a woman who had once questioned me across a boardroom table, set down her spoon, looked straight at me and said, "Wait, you're that Natalie." The color left my mother's face so quickly she seemed to shrink inside her pearls. The next 41 minutes tore through my family in a way I doubt can ever be stitched back together. But that dinner was only the spark. The fuse had been burning for 12 years. I was raised in Benton Ridge, Ohio, a town of roughly 7,900 people, the sort of place where everyone knows which truck belongs in which driveway and whose grandmother brings the best scalloped potatoes to the church basement supper. My father, Richard Parker, has worked at the same insurance office for 35 years. Same cubicle, same department, same title, Regional Claims Supervisor. He took the job before he was 29 and stayed there so long the place seemed to have built itself around him. My mother, Linda Parker, was smarter than she allowed anyone to forget. Before my sister and I were born, she kept books for 3 farms, a feed store, and a little pediatric clinic. She could find a wrong number in a column faster than most people could find their keys. Then she had me, and my father said it made more sense for the household if she stayed home. So she did. She never went back to paid work. She also never stopped resenting the life she had agreed to keep. My sister, Emily Parker, is 6 years younger than me. She works in marketing strategy in Omaha. She has been promoted 4 times in 5 years, and my mother announces each new title as if Emily has been sworn into public office. She never calls to share the news because joy is too simple. She calls to make sure I hear the comparison. The hallway in my parents' house tells the story better than they do. Emily's college diploma, Emily's leadership award, Emily in a framed clipping from her company newsletter, smiling beside a vice president. My side ends with one graduation picture, me in a black cap and gown, business degree in my hand, still acceptable because I had not yet disobeyed anyone. After that, I became what my mother liked to call hard to place. At church suppers, in pharmacy aisles, at cousins' birthday parties, she always presented Emily first. Emily has moved up again at Stratton and Vale. Then came the small, careful pause. Natalie is still doing her own thing. My father never corrected the emptiness. He never said, "Actually, Natalie owns a company." He looked at the floor, the coffee urn, the ceiling fan, anywhere but at me. Silence can sign its name on a room. I learned that young. When I was 24, I had a business administration degree and a plan thick enough to make a lender nervous. My mother had already chosen another future before I had finished writing mine. She had put down a deposit for a graduate program at North Plains University, told her church friends, and laid the course catalog on my bed as if my consent were a formality. One Wednesday after supper, I set a binder on the kitchen table and told her I was not enrolling. "I'm opening a commercial cleaning company," I said. "Not household maid work, commercial accounts. Offices, clinics, schools, managed buildings. I've got pricing, client research, projected cash flow, startup costs, all of it." She never touched the binder. She stared at it the way a person stares at something dead under the porch. "You bought a degree so you could clean toilets." My father came in from the garage midway through her sentence. He heard enough to choose his side. "I already told Paul Keating at the office you were getting your Master.S." Emily was out with friends. Later that night she texted me, "Mom says you're starting drama again." Only one person wanted to see the plan. My grandmother, Ruth Parker, is 82 now. Back then she was 70, with eyes sharp enough to total a grocery receipt in her head while listening to a weather warning. She sat with me on her back porch, a glass of tea sweating beside her, and read every page. She tapped one section with her knuckle and said, "What happens if the second largest account leaves you?" I showed her the backup numbers. She gave me $1,175 from a folded envelope in her dresser and a handkerchief she had stitched before my mother was married. Cream cotton, navy thread, her initials, RP. She pressed it into my palm and said, "For the mornings when you forget you have bones." That same evening, my mother told me that if I wanted to polish strangers' floors, I could pay for the embarrassment myself. So I packed my binder, a duffel bag of clothes, and the handkerchief. Before sunrise, I left Benton Ridge and drove to Columbus. My first apartment cost $610 a month. It had one narrow room, a tilted window, and a radiator that rattled like a loose wrench every night at 2. I bought a used gray cargo van for $3,200. The passenger door opened only from the outside, and the air conditioner worked in bursts when it felt merciful. My first customer was a dental clinic off Fulton Road. 5 treatment rooms, 1 waiting area, and a tiny restroom with pale blue tile. They paid $275 a week. I cleaned it myself at 4:30 every morning, then spent the day walking through office parks with business cards I had printed on cheap cardstock. At night, I made invoices at a scarred table I bought from a thrift store. 8 months later, I had 7 contracts. I worked every day, Sundays included, and my hands throbbed so badly at night that I slept with them tucked under a heating wrap. At the close of my first year, revenue was $86,000. Profit was just over $16,500. I hired my first employee, Carmen Rivera, a mother of 3 who arrived early, remembered every building manager's preference, and taught me more about running people well than any seminar ever could. She still works with me. Those first months taught me that cleaning is never only cleaning. It is keys that cannot be misplaced, alarm codes that must be learned, supply orders that cannot arrive late, and clients who notice one crooked trash liner but not the person who emptied 40 of them. I learned to price risk, not pride. I learned that a dependable night crew could rescue a property manager's week. I learned that the people mopping floors often know more about a workplace than the executives with nameplates on the doors. I made mistakes. I underbid a small law firm and lost money for 5 months. I hired the nephew of a client, and he quit by text halfway through his second shift. Once, I locked myself out of a medical suite at 5:10 in the morning and cried against the side of the van because the sky was turning light and I still had 2 restrooms to finish. Then I replaced the lockbox system, rewrote the checklist, and learned not to break down where clients could see me. Every Sunday, I called Grandma Ruth. She did not ask if I was exhausted. She asked about my close rate, whether my liability coverage was enough, and when I planned to document training. She listened as if my business was real because, in her mind, it had never been anything else. Every few weeks I called home. My mother always sounded as though she were waiting for my confession. "Ready to come back?" "No, Mom." "Well, Emily is doing wonderfully at her firm. Tell her I'm happy for her." My father was never near the phone. By the beginning of my 4th year, the ground shifted. I won a contract for an 11-story office property outside Dublin. Annual value, $465,000. I opened a second branch, hired my 46th employee, and passed $1.9 million in yearly revenue. I was 27, sitting in a real office with a locked file cabinet, a proper desk, and a photograph of Grandma Ruth on the shelf. My new business cards had arrived that morning. Forest green lettering, clean design, Greenstone Facility Solutions. Under the name, every space handled with care. I called my mother because some stubborn, younger part of me still believed facts could change feelings. "Mom, I just signed a contract worth $465,000 a year." There was silence. Then she said, "So how many people are wiping counters for you now?" 46. 46 people wiping counters. "Well, I suppose that's something." My father spoke from somewhere in the room. "Emily was picked for a senior leadership track." I stared at the card in my hand until the green letters blurred. That was the last time I brought them good news. There was no dramatic promise to myself, no slammed receiver, no speech. I simply stopped delivering my life to people who had already decided what it was. When someone hears almost $500,000 a year and answers with wiping counters, you learn that the verdict has already been written. Evidence will not be considered. For the next 9 years, my parents believed the version that suited them, and I stopped asking for a correction. Greenstone Facility Solutions now works in 14 states. We have 318 employees. Last year's annual revenue came in a little under $23 million. We service medical centers, colleges, corporate campuses, public buildings, and manufacturing offices. Our retention rate is 91%, which matters more to me than any headline because it means people can build steady lives here. We built a bilingual training program that 2 competitors tried to imitate, and 1 client asked to license. We have supervisors who began on overnight crews and now manage whole regions. Carmen Rivera runs our Ohio operations. None of this is secret. We have a website, a trade magazine profile, a regional business article, a few interviews I barely remember agreeing to, and a short public biography I never requested. My parents have never searched the company name. I know because my mother still tells people I do cleaning. What mattered most to me was the ladder inside the company. Nobody stayed invisible if I could help it. Crew members learned inventory, then scheduling, then client reports. Supervisors received paid training instead of being dropped into emergencies and blamed for not knowing the answer. When someone needed English classes, we found the money. When someone needed a shift change because childcare collapsed, we treated it like a schedule problem, not a character flaw. That was the part my parents never understood. They heard cleaning and pictured shame. I heard it and pictured paychecks, rent paid on time, hospital rooms ready before sunrise, and people entering buildings without ever wondering who made them safe enough to use. Then Emily called. It was the first time in 6 months. I was reviewing a facilities proposal when her name appeared on my phone. "I'm engaged," she said. "Jason Caldwell. His parents are hosting dinner next Saturday. Mom wants you there." "Mom wants me there?" Emily exhaled. "Grandma Ruth is coming." She asked whether you'd come. That was all it took. When Ruth asks, I show up. After we hung up, I typed Jason's last name into my laptop. Caldwell Properties and Development. I knew the company immediately. 21 months earlier, Greenstone had won the cleaning and maintenance contract for 39 of their buildings in Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky. It was worth $3.8 million a year, the largest deal we had ever landed. The contract had been approved by the chair of their board, Diane Caldwell, Jason's mother. I sat with that knowledge for a long time. The afternoon before the dinner, I stood in my office looking at the spray bottle on my desk. Lemon juice, white vinegar, water. The same mixture I had used in my first apartment when commercial products were too expensive. I unscrewed the top and breathed it in. Bright, sour, clean. It smelled like pre-dawn shifts, aching wrists, blue bathroom tile, and the first proof that I could keep myself alive. That evening I chose my clothes, a forest green blouse, black trousers, flat shoes, and a slim gold chain Grandma Ruth gave me for my 32nd birthday. The blouse matched my logo, but no one in that room was supposed to understand that. I was not trying to display success. I was dressing as I always did, ready to work and ready to leave. On Saturday morning, I called Ruth. "I'm heading out soon, Graham. Drive carefully, sweetheart." Her voice had grown thinner over the last year. Heart medication made her tired, and she hated that everyone could hear it. Then she said, "Natalie, yeah, don't let your mother fold you small and tuck you away." I drove toward Benton Ridge with that sentence riding beside me for more than 2 hours. Flat fields, signs for pumpkins and farm machinery, radio stations dissolving into static and reappearing as different songs. I kept thinking about Diane Caldwell. She would recognize me. I had no idea what she would do with it. I did not go there with a plan. I went because a woman with a tired heart wanted her granddaughter at dinner. The Willow Hearth sits outside Benton Ridge on a 2-lane county road with gravel shoulders and a view of empty fields. It is the kind of restaurant with exposed beams, little crocks of salted butter, and menu descriptions that turn plain food into paragraphs. They charge $52 for chicken and call it pasture-raised. I arrived at 6:36, 9 minutes early. My mother's sedan was already near the entrance. My father's coat lay across the back seat. Emily's white SUV sat 2 spaces over, a future bride sticker placed so perfectly it looked measured with a ruler. The private room was at the back. Oval table, 19 settings, low lights, warm bread, water glasses already sweating. My mother met me by the doorway. She wore a plum dress and a pearl strand I had never seen, probably bought for the dinner. Her hug was fast and tight, more assessment than affection. "Practical choice," she said, her eyes moving over my blouse and flats. My father stood behind her. He shook my hand like I was someone from another department. "Glad you made it," he said, looking at my shoulder instead of my eyes. Emily crossed the room in heels, her engagement ring flashing each time she lifted her hand. She hugged me with both arms. "Thanks for coming, Natalie." She led me to Jason, who was tall, polite, and clearly trying to impress everyone. "This is my older sister. She lives in Columbus." No work, no title, just a city. At the far end of the table, I saw Grandma Ruth in her wheelchair, smaller than she had looked at Christmas, cardigan buttoned unevenly, eyes still bright. She reached for me first. "There you are," she said. I sat beside her. Diane Caldwell had not arrived yet. Appetizers came out: roasted tomato tartlets, crab cakes, and a cheese board large enough for an office meeting. My mother moved around the room, assigning value to every relative. "This is my brother Dennis Fuller, 31 years with the fire department. This is my niece Rachel Cooper, finishing nursing school near the top of her class." Every person received a credential, a rank, a reason to be admired. She passed over me as if I were an empty chair someone had forgotten to push in. Robert Caldwell noticed. Jason's father had silver hair, an easy expression, and the calm curiosity of a man who did not need to prove he was paying attention. He leaned slightly toward me. "And what do you do, Natalie?" my mother answered before I drew breath. "Oh, Natalie does cleaning work, homes mostly." She flicked her fingers as if brushing away lint. I lifted my water glass, took a measured sip, and set it down. Hannah Caldwell, Jason's younger sister, gave me a kind smile. "Like a cleaning business, that's important work." My mother laughed softly. "It keeps her busy." Under the table, Grandma Ruth found my hand and squeezed. Her fingers were swollen, but command still lived in her grip. Then the door opened. Heels crossed the hardwood. A woman's voice apologized for a lane closure on Route 64. Diane Caldwell entered the room. She was 65, with a silver bob, a charcoal jacket, and the composed efficiency of someone used to ending meetings before they wandered. She greeted people in order: hand, name, eye contact next. Jason kissed her cheek. Robert pulled out her chair, my mother practically shone as she welcomed her. Diane worked her way around the table. When she reached me, she stopped. It lasted less than a second, but I saw it: recognition, then control. Her gaze dropped to my green blouse, nearly the same shade as the logo she had seen in the proposal in Indianapolis. She shook my hand and held it a moment too long. "Natalie," she said, warm but careful. "I didn't expect to see you here. Mrs. Caldwell, it's good to see you again." She sat across from me, unfolded her napkin, accepted water from the server, and glanced at me one more time. No one else noticed. My mother was telling Robert about Emily's newest account. My father was studying the wine list like it might offer an escape route. Emily was laughing at something Jason said under his breath. But I noticed. Diane knew I noticed. She said nothing for the next 20 minutes. She ate, praised the crab cakes, asked Jason about his apartment lease, and waited. The first time I met Diane Caldwell, it was in a conference room on the 24th floor of an Indianapolis office tower. Greenstone was pitching for the Caldwell Properties and Development contract. 39 buildings, office towers, medical suites, mixed-use properties, and administrative centers. It was worth $3.8 million a year. Winning it would change our trajectory. I brought a 52-page proposal. I had spent nearly 5 weeks building it: staffing plans, quality audits, response times, safety training, cost comparisons, emergency coverage. I printed 5 copies and had them bound at a copy shop after midnight. Diane chaired the meeting. 6 people sat around the table, but she asked most of the questions. She wanted to know our retention rate, 91%. She wanted details on training: 48 hours of onboarding, mentor shifts, language support, quarterly safety refreshers. She asked why I had started the company. I told her the truth. When I was 24, I cleaned my first clinic with a borrowed mop and a spray bottle. I decided then that nobody doing this work should be treated like furniture. She did not smile. She wrote something down. After the contract was awarded, she walked me to the elevator and said, "Most vendors talk about square footage. You talk about human systems. That is why you won." I carried that sentence for months. A stranger with power had understood my work after one meeting. My parents had 12 years and never came close. During that pitch, I learned something about Diane. She did not reward polish unless substance stood behind it. One competitor had glossy slides, aerial footage, and a slogan about excellence that sounded assembled by a committee. Diane let them finish, thanked them, and asked who would take the 2:00 a.m. call if a clinic flooded. They gave her a hotline. I gave her my operations director, my escalation chart, and the maximum response time by county. That was when she leaned back and looked at me differently. Not impressed exactly. Alert. Back at the dinner, the main course arrived. Walleye, braised greens, and potatoes in a cream sauce no one seemed to taste because the conversation had turned toward careers. Robert Caldwell opened the door. "Linda, you must be proud of both your daughters." My mother set her fork down and tilted her head. I knew that expression. She was arranging the room in her mind. "Emily has been such a gift," she said. 4 promotions in 5 years, her firm just trusted her with one of their biggest clients. She touched Emily's wrist. Emily smiled, embarrassed but not resistant. Then came the little pause. Natalie took a different path. She has always preferred hands-on work. My father leaned toward Robert as though sharing something gentle and harmless. "She started cleaning after college. We thought it was a phase." He chuckled. 12 years later, here we are." Hannah looked uncomfortable. Jason stared down at his plate. Robert's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. I cut a piece of fish. My hand stayed steady. I chewed, swallowed, and drank water. At the end of the table, Grandma Ruth put her fork down hard enough to make her plate ring. "Natalie is doing more than fine, Linda." My mother kept her smile smooth. "Of course she is, Mom. No one said otherwise." No one said. That was her specialty. She never left an easy bruise. She worked through implication, tone, timing, the kind of insult that vanishes when you try to repeat it. Diane set her glass down without taking a drink. Her eyes had been on my mother for nearly half a minute. Linda did not notice because Linda never watches the people who are watching her. Between the main course and dessert, I excused myself. The restroom was down a narrow hall with cream walls and framed paintings of barns, the sort of art that belongs only in restaurants and medical offices. My father was standing in the hallway when I came out, hands in his pockets, shoulders lowered. "Natalie, you okay?" "I'm fine, Dad." He shifted his weight. "Your mother can be hard, but she means well." "Does she?" His mouth opened. For 1 second, something moved across his face. Not courage exactly. More like the shadow of a door he nearly remembered how to open. His fingers turned his wedding ring. Then my mother's voice cut through from the dining room. "Richard, could you ask for another bottle?" Sharp. "Finished." He blinked. "I should take care of that." He walked away without another word. I stood there watching him step back into the warm light of the room. That was the closest my father ever came to admitting anything, a half sentence in a hallway. I had stopped building a life on almost. In the restroom, I washed my hands. The soap smelled like lemon, sharp enough to pull me back to the clinic with the blue tile, to early mornings and cheap shoes, and the day I learned hard work can bury you or build you. When I returned to the table, Grandma Ruth touched my wrist. Her silent question. I nodded. Emily had moved near the window with Jason. Her phone lay face down beside her bread plate. The screen lit up. A notification banner appeared. A group chat with a ring emoji. I did not pick it up. I did not shift it, but the preview glowed against the white cloth. Linda Parker sent 3 hours earlier. "Whatever you do, don't let Natalie talk about work tonight. The Caldwells don't need to hear that we have a maid in the family." Below it, Emily Parker sent 47 minutes earlier, already handled. "I just said she's my sister from Columbus. Nothing more." I read the lines twice before the screen went black. This had not been a slip. It was not a careless phrase from a nervous mother. It was a plan, written down and accepted before dinner started. 19 people were in the room, and 3 members of my family had made sure I entered it smaller than I was. I picked up my glass, drank, and set it down. The worst part was how calm I felt. Anger would have been easier. Anger has heat, something to throw. What moved through me was colder. It was the sound of a lock sliding into place. For years, I had explained their behavior as ignorance. They did not understand the field, did not know the scale, did not grasp the difference between cleaning one kitchen and managing hundreds of commercial sites. The phone proved they understood enough to hide it. They had chosen the smaller version of me because that version served them. Grandma Ruth watched my face. She could not have seen the screen, but she saw my jaw, my shoulders, and the way my fingers held the glass. "You all right, honey?" "I'm seeing it clearly." She did not press. Ruth knew when silence should carry the weight. Emily returned, picked up her phone without looking at it, and slipped it into her purse. She smiled at me as if nothing had happened, a bright, easy smile from someone who had never understood the price of being believed first. Dessert menus arrived. I left mine closed. Under the table, I opened my wallet and touched the handkerchief. Cream cotton, worn thin from years in my pocket. The navy RP had faded toward blue-gray, but my thumb could still feel the raised thread. Ruth had given it to me the night I left Benton Ridge. I had carried it through the first apartment, the first contract, the second branch, the 100th building, the Caldwell deal. It was with me now while my family treated my work like a stain to hide before guests arrived. I did not decide to expose anyone. I did not prepare a speech. I made only one choice. If someone asked me a direct question, I would answer it directly. No softening, no smoothing, no shrinking for people who had never made room for me. Across the table, Diane Caldwell stirred cream into her coffee with slow precision. "Columbus keeping you busy?" she asked. "Very busy," I said. "In the good way." She nodded once. I could see the calculation behind her eyes. The woman my mother had described and the woman from the boardroom did not fit together. Diane Caldwell did not strike me as someone who ignored bad math. Dessert had not arrived when my mother stood. She tapped her knife against her glass twice. The room quieted. "I'd like to say a few words," she began, one hand pressed over her heart. Linda Parker could summon tears as easily as other people order a cab. I had seen her do it at funerals, school board meetings, and church committees where she wanted volunteers. "When I look at Emily," she said, "I see everything I prayed a daughter of mine would become." For nearly 4 minutes she built a shrine. Emily's degree, Emily's work ethic, Emily's promotion, Emily's grace, Emily's future. Each sentence placed another flower at the feet of the daughter who had followed the path. She did not mention me. Robert Caldwell noticed. He waited until she paused. "And Natalie?" he asked. "Your older daughter is here too." My mother blinked, recovered, and turned toward me as though she had remembered a serving dish. "Of course, this is Natalie, our other daughter. She cleans homes for a living." She smiled as if it were charming. My father added from his chair without being asked, "We stopped trying to make sense of her." He laughed. No one laughed with him. Diane Caldwell lowered her spoon very carefully. The whole room seemed to tighten around the tiny motion. The server stopped halfway through refilling Robert's water. Diane turned to me. "Natalie," she said, even and calm, "tell me about the cleaning work." My mother jumped in. "Oh, it isn't complicated. She goes to houses, scrubs kitchens, that sort of thing. She's done it since college." Diane did not look at her. I would rather hear Natalie answer. Polite, clear, final, I placed my napkin beside my plate. "I own a commercial cleaning and facilities company," I said. "We service offices, hospitals, colleges, public buildings, and industrial sites." My mother's smile tightened. "She makes it sound very official." Diane kept looking at me. "How many states?" 14. My father's fork struck his plate. He had not meant to move, but his hand jerked. "Employees?" Diane asked. 318 as of April. Emily turned toward me slowly, as if a sound had come from another room and she was only now realizing it was an alarm. Hannah's lips parted. Robert leaned back. Jason looked at his mother with the face of a man discovering a second conversation had been happening above his head. My mother's expression emptied. Diane reached into her purse and removed a business card. Forest green type, clean layout, the tagline I could read from across the table because I had chosen every word myself. Greenstone Facility Solutions. Every space handled with care. She placed it in front of my mother, face up. "Wait," she said quietly. "You're that Natalie," she already knew. She was asking for Linda. "Yes, ma'am." Diane looked at my mother, then my father, then back at me. Caldwell Properties and Development signed a $3.8 million annual contract with Greenstone Facility Solutions 21 months ago. 39 buildings across 3 states. Natalie presented the proposal herself. She paused. She sat at my conference table. I watched my mother lose color. I had seen Linda angry, wounded, theatrical, icy, triumphant. I had watched her cry in grocery stores and make grown women apologize for things they had not done. But I had never seen her truly stunned. It started in her cheeks and spread to her lips. Her hand tightened around the stem of her wine glass until her knuckles went pale. Richard froze with his glass halfway lifted. Emily stared at me, her rings scattering light across the table while she forgot to admire it. Grandma Ruth did not move. She looked at my mother with an expression I finally recognized. Patience. The patience of someone watching a lie finally meet the room. For 5 seconds, no one spoke. Then everyone did. Jason leaned forward. Natalie, you run Greenstone, Hannah said. 14 states. Dennis Fuller turned toward my father. Richard, did you know about this? Robert set his napkin on the table and looked at my father the way executives look at someone who has just misstated a fact in public. You said you gave up on her. Richard drank wine and said nothing. My mother recovered first. She always recovered first. Well, she never told us it had grown like that, she said, her voice suddenly warm, startled, and false. Natalie is very private. We had no idea. She turned to Diane with widened eyes. I always believed she would find her way. I set down my fork. You knew, Mom. I told you when we opened the second branch. I told you when we crossed 6 million. You asked how many people I had wiping counters. I did not say that. Grandma Ruth spoke from the end of the table. You did, it was on speaker, I was sitting right beside her. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. The words arrived solid and unmovable. My father put his hand in the bread basket and left it there, fingers resting on a roll as if he had forgotten what he wanted. My mother's eyes filled on command. She pressed her napkin to her mouth and took a shaky breath meant to pull the room toward her. I cannot believe you are doing this to me at your sister's engagement dinner, she said. Tonight is not about you, Natalie. She turned toward Diane, softening her face. I'm sorry. Families are complicated. We have always tried to support both our girls. Emily reached for our mother's arm automatically. The favored child, trained to comfort before thinking. I did not follow the script. I didn't start this, Mom. You introduced me. Diane asked. I answered. Emily looked at me, voice rising. Can we please not do this? It's my dinner. I have been sitting here eating fish, I said. I did not give a toast about myself. I did not interrupt your mother. I answered a question. Diane spoke without raising her volume. Emily, no one is trying to ruin your evening. But your mother made inaccurate statements about your sister in front of my family. Correcting a fact is not an attack. The room went still. My father tried to chuckle. Well, this is becoming quite a show. The sound collapsed before it became anything. Then he shifted into the reasonable tone he used with clients at the insurance office. Natalie, come on, we didn't know. You could have explained it more clearly. We're not mind readers. I did explain it, Dad, several times. You stopped listening, so I stopped telling you. Robert looked directly at him. I'll be honest, Richard. If one of my children had built a company that size, I would have said it first. My father's jaw tightened. Robert was not trying to wound him. That was the problem with plain facts. They can do damage without effort. Diane added, precise but not cruel, Greenstone has the strongest retention numbers of any vendor we use. Natalie built an excellent company. My mother cut in. Then she should have told us. How could we know if she hid it? Grandma Ruth's voice came again, thin but firm. She didn't hide it, Linda, you buried it. For the first time that night, I saw fear on my mother's face. Not guilt, not shame, fear. The table broke into low conversations. Jason leaned close to Emily. Robert refilled Diane's water. Dennis excused himself to the restroom and stayed gone long enough to call someone. My mother stood, smoothed her dress, and walked toward the hallway. She stopped beside me. Come with me. I followed because I wanted to hear what she would say without witnesses. The hallway was quiet. The painted barns looked down from their frames. My mother turned. The tears were gone. Her eyes were dry, hard, and bright. You planned this. No, you knew Diane would be here. You knew she'd recognize you. You came to embarrass me. I came because Grandma asked me to. Do not use my mother as cover. You introduced me as the family maid, Mom. I sat down and ate dinner. Her jaw tightened. She changed direction. You are still the girl who chose scrubbing toilets over a respectable life. I have a degree, I built a company, you chose not to see either. After everything I sacrificed for you. I know what you sacrificed. You bring it up whenever you're angry, but that was your choice. This is mine. If you cut yourself off from this family, you will have nothing. I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman who traded ledgers for laundry, hated the bargain, and punished me because I refused to make the same one. I will have what I already have. A company, 318 employees, and a grandmother who knows exactly who I am. She flinched. Then she turned and walked back into the dining room with her spine straight and her public face restored. Emily caught me before I went in. She was crying, and this time the tears were real. Mascara had smudged beneath one eye. Her breath kept catching. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. "I'm your sister." I leaned against the wall. "When was the last time you asked about my life, Emily? Not holiday plans, not mom, me." She opened her mouth, closed it, and looked away. "I'm not trying to hurt you," I said. "You believed mom because it was easy. I thought you were barely hanging on. Mom gave you a story that made her comfortable. You never checked it." Emily pressed her shoulders against the opposite wall. 4 feet separated us, and it felt like the whole decade. "So it's really that big? 14 states, 318 people, crews who show up before dawn and after midnight because the work matters, a grandmother who calls every Sunday because she thinks to ask." Her face folded. She did not apologize. Not yet. She was not ready for that word. But she did not defend our mother, and in the Parker family, silence against Linda was its own rebellion. I walked back to the table. Emily came a minute later, red-eyed, napkin in hand. I stood behind my chair. I did not raise my voice. I did not grip the table or square my shoulders like someone in a movie. One hand rested on the chair back. The other was in my pocket, thumb against Ruth's faded initials. "I'm going to say this once." The table quieted. Cups hovered. Forks stopped. Even the server by the door held still with a tray in her hands. "I love this family. I have spent 12 years loving it from enough distance to breathe." I looked at my mother. "Mom, tonight you introduced me as someone who cleans homes. Dad, you said you gave up trying to understand me." I let the words sit. In front of strangers, in front of Grandma. I looked down the table at Ruth. Her hands were flat beside her plate. Her eyes were wet, but her chin was lifted. Grandma never gave up. She asked questions. She listened. She remembered. I faced the table again. "I didn't come here to humiliate anyone. I came because my grandmother wanted me here. But I will not sit in rooms where my own parents describe me as less than I am." I took one breath. "So this changes now. I will answer Grandma's calls. I will come when she asks me to. But I will not attend family gatherings where the cost of entering is pretending my life is smaller. That is not revenge, it is a boundary." I sat, picked up my water, and drank. No one spoke for several seconds, then my mother stood so quickly her chair scraped the floor. "You can't just do that," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm your mother." I looked at her. "Then act like one." 3 words, they dropped into the room and spread. My mother's composure broke, not the polished kind, the real one. Her hands trembled against the edge of the table. "I gave up everything for this family," she said. "My job, my plans, She stopped. She saw the Caldwells watching, saw Robert's face, saw Diane's stillness. She understood she had said too much in front of people she had spent the evening trying to impress. Diane spoke quietly. "Linda, your daughter built something remarkable. You might consider looking at it." "You don't know our family," my mother snapped. "I know your daughter," Diane said. "That is enough." My father remained seated, silent and still. He would survive this the way he survived everything, physically present, absent when it mattered. At the far end of the table, Grandma Ruth said, "Sit down, Linda." Her voice was thin, but iron ran through it. My mother sat, not because she agreed, because Ruth was still her mother, and even Linda Parker would not defy that voice in front of 19 witnesses. I pushed back my chair and walked to the end of the table. Ruth's cardigan had slipped off one shoulder, and I fixed it automatically. Love often looks like small repairs. I knelt beside her wheelchair. She took my hands. Her skin was cool, her knuckles swollen, but the grip was still hers. "You don't have to stay for me, sweetheart," she whispered. "You came, that was enough. I'll call Sunday." "You better." I kissed her forehead. She smelled like lavender soap and the cedar chest where she kept quilts older than me. She pressed something into my hand, a folded note small enough to vanish inside my palm. I closed my fingers around it without looking. I stood and turned to Diane. "Thank you, Mrs. Caldwell, for asking." Diane nodded once. "Thank you, Natalie, for answering." I took my purse from the chair. Then I opened my wallet, removed one of my business cards, and placed it beside my mother's plate. Forest green lettering, clean layout, every space handled with care. Then I walked out. I did not run. I did not look back. My flats clicked against the hardwood, steady all the way to the hostess stand. Behind me, my mother said something sharp, already building the version of events she would tell later, but the front door closed before the words reached me. I drove 11 miles before I pulled into the empty parking lot of a small white church. One pickup sat near the back, probably the custodian's. The dashboard clock read 9:27. A security light made a pale circle on the gravel. I turned off the engine and opened my hand. Ruth's note was folded twice. Her handwriting leaned right, shaky from arthritis but clear. Natalie, I watched you build the life I was too afraid to build. Your mother inherited my fear. You inherited my nerve. I should have said so long ago. Don't wait for them to recognize you. The right people already do. Grandma, I read it 3 times. Then I cried hard, bent over the steering wheel of a car in a church parking lot I had never visited, while the windows fogged and 12 years of swallowed hurt finally left my body. I took the handkerchief from my wallet and pressed it to my face. The faded initials scratched softly against my cheek. When I was 24, Ruth gave me $1,175 and a piece of cotton. That night, she gave me the sentence my parents never could. I drove home after 22 minutes. The next 2 days showed me the shape of the damage. My mother called 9 times. I let every call go to voicemail. The first messages were furious. You humiliated me in front of the Caldwells. Do you understand what you did? The next ones were wet and breathy. I'm your mother. You don't abandon your mother. My father sent one text Monday morning. Your mother is devastated. I read it and did not answer. Emily texted Sunday night. I am sorry I never asked. Can we talk without Mom in the middle? I did not respond right away, but I did not delete it. Diane Caldwell emailed from her company account Monday afternoon. The subject line was dinner/extension. Natalie, my son is marrying Emily, not her mother. Greenstone remains one of our strongest partners. Our office will send renewal paperwork this week. Also, dinner sometime if you are willing, not business. Just 2 women who understand work. Diane, I printed the email and placed it beside the first dollar I ever earned from the dental clinic. The following Monday at 7:15, I walked into Greenstone Facility Solutions in Columbus. Glass conference room, open desks, break rooms smelling like Carmen's coffee, strong enough to raise the dead. Carmen met me in the hallway with 2 mugs. Boss, she said, studying my face, family, engagement dinner. She handed me the coffee. Those can do it. At my desk, 294 emails were waiting. One was from Caldwell's office, 4-year extension, improved terms, expedited by Diane. I looked at the spray bottle on my desk. Lemon juice, vinegar, water, same smell, same sharpness. Same woman, only older and harder to fold. 2 weeks later, I called my mother once. She answered but did not say hello. Mom, I'm saying this clearly, I love you, that hasn't changed. But I will not come to any family gathering where you or Dad introduce me as less than what I am. If I miss holidays, I miss them. If we see each other less, then that's what happens. You're choosing pride over family. I'm choosing peace. They are not the same thing. She hung up. I sat with the silence for half a minute. It did not feel empty. It felt arranged at last, like a room after the furniture has been moved where it belongs. Then I called Grandma Ruth. She picked up before the second ring. How did it go? About how I expected. Did you say what needed saying? Every word. Then that's enough, honey. I looked at the 2 business cards on my desk, the cheap first-year card with the bad font and the current one with forest green lettering and 14 states behind it. Same work, same woman, different scale. I folded Ruth's note and placed it in the frame beside that first business card. Then I opened the Caldwell renewal, signed the first page, and went back to work.